Let me tell you something that can change the way you look at your relationship forever. Sometimes the truth doesn't come from what a man says. It comes from what he suddenly starts doing differently. Because when a man is hiding something, he may be able to control his words, but he can't always control his patterns. You may feel that something has changed. You may not have proof. You may not even be able to explain exactly what feels wrong. But deep down, you notice the distance, the unexplained phone calls, the sudden privacy, the emotional shift. And the hardest part is that you start questioning yourself. You ask, am I overthinking? You ask, am I becoming insecure? You ask, maybe he's just stressed. But sometimes your intuition isn't trying to make you paranoid. Sometimes it's trying to make you pay attention. Now, none of these signs automatically prove that a man is seeing another woman. People change their behavior for many reasons. But when several of these behaviors appear together repeatedly and without a reasonable explanation, they deserve your attention. The first thing a man may do when he's secretly involved with someone else is become unusually protective of his phone. Suddenly, his phone is never far from him. He takes it into another room. He turns the screen away from you. He changes passwords without explanation. He starts deleting notifications. He becomes nervous when you're near his phone. And maybe there was a time when he could leave it on the table without thinking twice. Now, it's like that phone contains a world you're not allowed to enter. Understand this. Privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. Everybody deserves some privacy, but secrecy creates a different atmosphere. Privacy says this is personal. Secrecy says I don't want you to know. And when the behavior changes suddenly, you should notice the change, not because you should become a detective, but because healthy relationships don't require you to constantly feel like you're solving a mystery. The second thing he may do is create emotional distance while still trying to keep you around. This is one of the most confusing behaviors because he may not completely leave. He still talks to you. He still comes home. He may still tell you he loves you, but something feels missing. The conversation becomes shorter. The affection becomes inconsistent. He stops asking about your day. He seems physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. And that can hurt more than an argument, because when somebody is angry, at least you know something is happening. But emotional distance creates uncertainty. You start wondering where his mind is. You start asking yourself why the man who once couldn't wait to talk to you now seems distracted when you're standing right in front of him. And here's where you have to be careful. Do not start chasing him for emotional reassurance every 5 minutes. Do not beg him to communicate. Do not abandon your dignity just because somebody else has temporarily withdrawn theirs. If he is pulling away, give yourself enough strength to observe instead of panic, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop filling the silence with your own explanations. The third sign is that his schedule suddenly becomes difficult to understand. He starts having more unexplained late nights. There are new errands, new meetings, new reasons why plans have to change. He becomes less predictable, and the details don't always line up. One day he says he was with coworkers. Another day he says he needed some time alone. Another day something happened that caused him to stay late. Individually, these things may mean absolutely nothing, but patterns matter. If someone consistently gives you vague explanations while becoming increasingly unavailable, you have every right to question what is happening in your relationship, not with accusations, not with screaming, not with revenge, with clarity. A mature woman does not need to become an investigator to deserve honesty. She simply needs to recognize when the relationship she is experiencing no longer matches the relationship she was promised. And if you constantly have to decode somebody's behavior, that alone is telling you something about the level of peace inside that relationship. The fourth thing he may do is suddenly change how he presents himself. Maybe he starts paying much more attention to his appearance. New clothes, new cologne, more time in front of the mirror, more concern about his body, more effort before going somewhere that seemingly doesn't require that much effort. Again, taking better care of yourself is not evidence of cheating. A man can decide to improve his appearance for many healthy reasons. But if the change appears suddenly, especially alongside secrecy, emotional distance, and unexplained schedule changes, then the combination becomes worth noticing. Because when somebody becomes intensely concerned about how they look outside the relationship, while becoming less concerned by how they treat the person inside the relationship. Something may be out of balance, and that brings us to something deeper. Sometimes the biggest warning sign isn't what he does with another woman. It's what he stops doing with you. He stops making an effort. He stops being curious about your life. He stops planning with you. He stops trying to impress you. He stops protecting the emotional connection. And you find yourself carrying the entire relationship. You initiate the conversations. You plan the dates. You ask what's wrong. You try to repair the distance. You keep giving chances, and he keeps giving you just enough attention to prevent you from walking away. That is a dangerous cycle, because love should not feel like you are constantly auditioning for a position you already earned. The fifth sign is that he becomes unusually defensive when you ask simple questions. You don't accuse him. You simply ask, "Where were you?" And suddenly you're the problem. You ask, "Who are you talking to?" He says, "Why are you always checking on me?" You ask about a change in his behavior. Suddenly, he tells you that you're insecure. Now listen carefully. There is a difference between being questioned unfairly and becoming defensive, because you don't want to answer a reasonable question. Healthy communication allows two people to ask questions without immediately turning the conversation into an attack. If every concern you express gets turned against you, you may eventually become afraid to speak. And that is when you start abandoning your own instincts just to keep the peace. You tell yourself, maybe I should stop asking. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm imagining everything. No, you are allowed to notice changes. You are allowed to ask for clarity. You are allowed to expect honesty. And most importantly, you are allowed to decide what kind of relationship you are willing to live in. Because here's the truth nobody tells you enough. You don't need courtroom evidence to recognize that a relationship no longer feels healthy to you. You don't have to catch someone in the act before you are allowed to have boundaries. And you definitely don't have to compete with another woman for a man who has already chosen to disrespect the relationship. If a man is secretly seeing someone else, that is his choice. It is not a measurement of your beauty. It is not proof that you were not enough. It is not evidence that another woman has something you don't have. His behavior represents his character. Your response represents yours. And that is where your power begins. Don't lose yourself trying to expose somebody. Don't spend every waking hour checking phones, analyzing timestamps, reading messages, or trying to catch somebody in a lie. Because if you have reached the point where you no longer trust the person you're with, the real question is not only, is he cheating? The bigger question is, why am I living in a relationship where I feel like I have to investigate the person I love? That question changes everything, because your goal should not be to become better at catching him. Your goal should be to become stronger at protecting your peace. You deserve a relationship where communication is clear. You deserve consistency. You deserve affection that doesn't disappear without explanation. You deserve honesty that doesn't require you to beg for it. And you deserve a man who understands that loyalty is not something you perform only when you're being watched. Real loyalty exists when nobody is checking. So if you've noticed these behaviors, don't immediately panic. Step back, observe, communicate. Listen to his response, watch whether his actions match his words, because words can explain almost anything. Fatals are harder to fake. And if you discover that the man you trusted has been giving his attention, affection, or loyalty to someone else, remember this. You are not losing your value because somebody failed to recognize it. You are not becoming less beautiful because somebody became less faithful. You are not becoming less worthy because somebody made an unworthy choice. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is accepting a painful truth instead of living inside a comfortable lie. And sometimes the moment you stop chasing answers from someone who refuses to give them is the moment you finally hear your own voice again. You hear yourself saying, I deserve better. You hear yourself saying, I will not beg for honesty. You hear yourself saying, I will not compete for love. And most importantly, you hear yourself saying, I will never abandon myself just to keep someone else. That is where your power is. Not in catching him, not in confronting another woman, not in revenge. Your power is in knowing your worth so deeply that dishonesty no longer has the authority to destroy you, because the right man will not make you constantly question where you stand. The right relationship will not require you to become a detective. And the right kind of love will never make you feel like you have to fight for a place in someone's heart. So pay attention to the patterns. Trust your ability to observe. Ask for honesty. Set your boundaries and never forget. Sometimes the truth hurts for a moment, but living a lie can steal years from your life. Choose clarity. Choose dignity. Choose yourself. Because when you finally understand your worth, you stop begging people to treat you like you matter, and you start walking away from anything that makes you forget that you do. And there is one more thing you need to understand. Sometimes the signs are not obvious because a man who is hiding something may become very good at controlling the surface. He may still smile. He may still say, "I love you." He may still kiss you goodbye. He may still tell you that everything is fine. But relationships are not built on words alone. They are built on consistency. And when consistency disappears, you can feel it. You may notice that he no longer tells you about the little things happening in his life. He used to share his thoughts, his frustrations, his plans, even the things that seemed insignificant. Now you have to pull information out of him. You ask questions, he gives short answers. You try to continue the conversation, he changes the subject. You attempt to connect emotionally, he suddenly becomes busy. That emotional wall can become one of the most painful things a woman experiences because you are not necessarily being rejected physically, you are being excluded emotionally. And emotional exclusion creates loneliness even when you are sitting next to someone. That is why you should never ignore how a relationship consistently makes you feel. One bad day does not define a man. One strange conversation does not prove betrayal. One late night does not automatically mean another woman. But repeated changes matter. Paros matter. Consistency matters. If the same behavior keeps happening and every attempt to communicate gets dismissed, you have to stop asking only, "What is he doing?" You also need to ask, "What is this relationship doing to me? Is it making you stronger? Or is it making you anxious? Is it giving you peace? Or is it forcing you to constantly question yourself? Are you becoming more confident? Or are you slowly becoming a version of yourself that checks everything because you no longer trust anything?" That is when you need to pause. Because love should not require you to sacrifice your emotional stability just to keep another person comfortable. And let me tell you something powerful. Never confront another woman before you have confronted the truth within yourself. A lot of women make the mistake of thinking the other woman is the enemy. But the other woman did not make a commitment to you. He did. He is the person who owes you honesty. He is the person who made promises. He is the person who accepted your trust. So don't waste your energy fighting another woman while ignoring the person who was supposed to protect your relationship. Your dignity is worth more than revenge. Your peace is worth more than proving a point. And your future is worth more than winning an argument. If you discover that he really has been seeing someone else, you have a decision to make. You can destroy yourself trying to understand why. Or you can accept that sometimes people reveal their character through choices we never expected them to make. You may ask, what did she have that I didn't? Maybe she was younger. Maybe she looked different. Maybe she gave him attention. Maybe she made him feel something. But stop. Do not turn his decision into a competition between women. Infidelity is not a beauty contest. It is not proof that another woman is better than you. Sometimes people betray good partners because they lack discipline, maturity, honesty, or self-control. You cannot prevent someone from making a bad decision by becoming perfect. Write that again in your heart. You cannot become so beautiful, so supportive, so loving, so understanding, or so available that you guarantee somebody else will never betray you. Loyalty is a choice, and his choices belong to him. Your choices belong to you. That means your responsibility is not to control him. Your responsibility is to control how you respond. If you confront him, speak calmly. Do not scream just to make your pain louder. Your pain is already real. Do not threaten another woman. Do not beg him to stay. Do not offer to become somebody you're not just because you're afraid of losing him. Ask the questions you need answered. Then listen not only to what he says, listen to how he says it. Listen to whether he takes responsibility. Listen to whether he tries to repair the damage. Listen to whether his actions change after the conversation, because an apology without changed behavior is just another version of the same pattern. And if he says, "You're imagining things," but refuses to address the behavior that caused your concern, don't let that sentence silence you. You know what you've experienced. You know what has changed. You know how the relationship feels. And you are allowed to trust yourself enough to seek clarity. But there is another side to this. You also have to be honest with yourself. Sometimes fear can make us see betrayal where there isn't any. Past heartbreak can make innocent behavior feel suspicious. Insecurity can turn uncertainty into certainty. That is why you need evidence before making accusations. Don't destroy something good because anxiety convinced you of something that wasn't true. Strength is not blindly trusting, and strength is not blindly accusing. Strength is having enough emotional control to pause, observe, communicate, and make a decision based on reality. That is what mature love looks like. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to stop caring. You don't need to punish someone because you're afraid they might hurt you. You simply need boundaries. A boundary says, I love you, but I will not accept dishonesty. A boundary says, I want this relationship, but I will not lose myself to keep it. A boundary says, I am willing to work through problems, but I will not work alone. And that last one is important. You cannot save a relationship by yourself. Two people have to choose each other. Two people have to communicate. Two people have to protect trust. Two people have to take responsibility. If you are the only one fighting for the relationship, then eventually you are not fighting for love anymore. You're fighting against reality, and reality eventually wins. So if you have been noticing these signs, don't immediately assume the worst, but don't ignore everything either. Pay attention, look at the entire pattern, ask yourself whether the relationship has changed, ask whether his words and actions still match, ask whether you feel respected, ask whether you feel emotionally safe, and then make your decision from strength, not fear, because sometimes a woman stays because she is afraid of being alone. But being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Being with someone who constantly makes you feel alone can be much more painful. Sometimes losing the wrong person creates space for you to find yourself again. You remember the woman you were before you started questioning everything. You remember your confidence, your laughter, your goals, your standards, your dreams. You remember that your life was valuable before that relationship and it will still be valuable after it. And if he chooses to be faithful, honest, and committed, then let his actions prove it. Don't demand perfection. Demand consistency. Don't demand constant attention. Demand respect. Don't demand that he never make a mistake. Demand that he takes responsibility when he does. And don't demand that he prove his love every second. Watch whether his everyday behavior naturally makes you feel secure. That's the difference between love and performance. Real love does not need a stage. It shows up in ordinary moments. It shows up when nobody is watching. It shows up in honesty. It shows up in accountability. It shows up in the little choices that protect the relationship. So remember these 5 behaviors. Protecting the phone in a way that feels secretive. Creating unusual emotional distance. Developing unexplained changes in his schedule. Suddenly changing his appearance and effort in suspicious ways, and becoming defensive whenever reasonable questions are asked. None of these signs alone proves that another woman exists, but when they become a repeated pattern, they deserve a conversation. And if the conversation reveals betrayal, don't let betrayal convince you that you are broken. You are hurt. There is a difference. Hurt can heal. Brokenness does not have to be your identity. You can rebuild, you can learn, you can become stronger, you can walk away, you can forgive without returning. You can love someone and still decide that their behavior is unacceptable. And sometimes the most powerful sentence a woman can say is not, "How could you do this to me?" Sometimes it is, "I trusted you, and you showed me that my trust was misplaced. I won't destroy myself trying to change what you chose to do." That's strength, because the moment you stop begging someone to value you, you begin valuing yourself. The moment you stop chasing explanations from someone committed to confusion, you begin choosing clarity. The moment you stop competing for attention, you remember that genuine love should never require competition. And the moment you realize your worth, you stop fearing the loss of people who refuse to respect it. So if you're watching this and something in your heart feels familiar, take a breath. Don't panic. Don't react from anger. Don't make a decision based only on fear. Stand still, observe, communicate, protect your dignity. And remember that no relationship is worth losing yourself over if he is innocent. Honest communication can strengthen the relationship. If he is hiding something, the truth will eventually reveal itself. Either way, your job is not to chase the truth until you destroy your peace. Your job is to stay grounded enough to recognize it when it appears. Because you deserve more than a love that keeps you guessing. You deserve more than half-truths. You deserve more than secret conversations and unexplained disappearances. You deserve a relationship where you can breathe, where you can trust, where you can laugh without wondering what is happening behind your back, where love feels like partnership instead of investigation. And never forget this, a woman who knows her worth does not need to threaten someone into loyalty. She doesn't need to compete with another woman. She doesn't need to beg someone to choose her. She simply watches the choices people make and believes them because actions reveal what words sometimes hide. So love deeply, give honestly, communicate openly, but never abandon yourself because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. And when you protect that relationship, you become powerful in a way nobody can take from you. If he chooses you, let him choose you through his actions. If he respects you, let that respect be visible. If he loves you, let that love bring peace instead of constant confusion. And if he betrays you, remember that his betrayal is not the end of your story. It may simply be the moment you finally stop settling for a love that was never giving you everything you deserved. You don't need revenge. You don't need another woman to lose. You don't need him to suffer. You need your peace back. You need your confidence back. You need your life back. And once you get those things back, you will understand something very important. The greatest victory is not making someone regret losing you. The greatest victory is reaching the point where you no longer need them to regret it. You know who you are. You know what you bring. You know what you deserve. And from that moment forward, you stop chasing love. You start choosing it wisely. You stop begging for honesty. You start requiring it. You stop fearing being alone. You start fearing losing yourself. And that is when everything changes. Because a woman who knows her worth can survive the truth. She can survive disappointment. She can survive heartbreak, but she will not willingly live inside a lie. So trust your eyes, trust the patterns, trust honest communication, and above all, trust yourself enough to walk away from anything that repeatedly destroys your peace, because you were never created to compete for love. You were created to experience love that chooses you freely, respects you completely, and stands beside you honestly. And when you understand that, you stop asking, what does he see in another woman? You start asking the question that matters most. Why would I accept anything less than the love, honesty, and respect I know I deserve? And once you can answer that question with confidence, you are no longer afraid of losing anyone, because you finally understand that losing someone who cannot value you is not always a loss. Sometimes it is freedom.